Hello, this is Stuart at creativeXP, and in this video I'm going to provide a design walkthrough of my Mario Maker 2 course, Bowser's Battle Royale. If you haven't played the level, you can find a link to my playthrough video and the course ID in the description below. So this level, originally released in July 2019, was created at the height of the Battle Royale's appeal, when it felt like every other week a new Battle Royale game was being announced, and the meme of 100 players dropping from the sky onto an island to do battle was everywhere. Around this same time, the website Giantbomb was inviting its community to submit their Mario Maker levels, where hosts Dan Ryckert and Ben Pack would attempt to play through these creations as part of their Get on My Level feature. With all of this in mind, I thought it would be fun to try creating a Mario Battle Royale mode of my own that I could submit to the Giantbomb folks to potentially play on stream. Or at the very least, create a very different take on the Battle Royale genre. As part of my level, I wanted to include some references to my Battle Royale of choice at the time, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which I thought could also provide some fun moments for a live stream playthrough if the level was selected by Giantbomb. I decided I would build the level in my preferred Super Mario World style, which would provide me the building blocks to recreate some of the locales and recognisable moments of dropping into Erangel. Surprisingly, it doesn't take much to create the structure and gameplay of a Battle Royale mode inside Super Mario Maker. Using the clear conditions, I can set the level to only complete once the players defeated all 99 enemies present in the level, replicating the 100-player elimination of Battle Royales. Going with the standard Galoomba enemy seems the best option here, since they are the most commonly found enemy and would provide the most appropriate challenge when there are 99 of them wandering around the level at the same time. As it happens, adding 99 Galoombas to a level starts to run into restrictions in Super Mario Maker, presumably to maintain performance and prevent levels constructed entirely in enemies or other hazards that would make the experience unplayable. That does mean that I'll have limited access to other enemies or ingredients when building this level though. One key element that is missing to represent the Battle Royale is the ever-decreasing circle that pushes players into a smaller arena to increase encounters as the player numbers dwindle. To replicate this, I can configure the level timer to create a reasonable time pressure that would kill the player if time is exceeded, just like if they are caught outside the circle for too long when they're playing a Battle Royale. Now obviously, I would need to construct an island that players must drop onto from an airplane flying overhead. This means that the start location will need to be separate from the main playable space of the level, and I'll need to use a warp pipe to transport the player to and from the airplane. In terms of loot, I can use the fire flower to represent weapons that the player must find in the battleground. Using Buzzy Beetles, I can provide armor in the form of a level 3 helmet that will protect Mario from any damage. Mushrooms will provide health pickups to heal any damage taken during combat, though the power up from a fire flower will negate the usefulness of this in most instances. Finally, a prerequisite of any level that was to be submitted for Giantbomb's Get on My Level feature was that the level start and screenshot must feature a GB message constructed using coins, as well as GB in the title, to indicate that the level was an original creation. Now let's see how that takes shape as we look at the level in more detail. As mentioned, I needed to separate the starting location from the majority of the playable space that would represent the island of Erangel in this nod to PUBG. Since the level start can't be modified, it would limit how much I could do here to prevent the player gaining access to the island. The solution was to simply ensure that the player could not jump across the gap, which I achieved by having the edge of the island raised to create an impassable cliff. In a way, this starting location is somewhat similar to the starting island in PUBG, that players load into before being transported to the airplane to begin the round. Getting the player onto the airplane as quickly as possible was also my main aim with this starting area, so I used the small space available to have the player climb upwards towards this warp pipe that would transport the player to the airplane above. The only other consideration was to provide sufficient space to create the GB letters in coins as part of the prerequisites for the level to be submitted for Giantbomb's feature. Now here we are at the airplane, which was constructed using the airship course theme with its rolling clouds background that would convey the flight of the plane passing over the island below. I constructed the shell of an airplane using various elements to represent the different sections of the interior of a large cargo plane like the one used in PUBG. Ice blocks represent the cockpit at the front of the plane. The passenger seats are constructed with coins, so that the player can move back and forth through the plane unimpeded, and there is even a luggage rack above the seats. At the rear of the plane is the hold, complete with nets for securing larger cargo, such as red crate supply drops, though obviously there are no crates on this plane transporting the players, which can be seen eagerly waiting to drop as represented by these Goombuds, stand-ins for the 99 Galoombas that are maxed out in the next part of the level. As a further nod to the PUBG experience, I added a lot of sound effects to the airplane to replicate the typical carnage and audible assault that is created by 100 players screaming, taunting, and talking to each other on open mics through proximity voice chat at the start of each round.
This is the worst place to have voice chat on!
I wanted this moment in my level to be as obnoxious and terrible as the real thing, especially as a moment that I thought would be appreciated by the Giantbomb hosts as they played. If nothing else, it would provide an incentive to quickly choose a drop location to exit the plane and escape the tirade of proximity voice chat. In this instance, the player can do that by selecting one of 4 available warp pipes that will each allow the player to drop onto the island in a different location. Regardless of which pipe is selected, they will each transport the player to a defined location in the sky above where they are instantly dropped to the island below, along with a number of Galoombas players that also decided to drop in on this location. This was achieved by setting the Galoombas to spawn alongside the player warp pipe so that they too would fall to the island alongside the player. I was careful to avoid positioning any of these enemies too close above the player start, since any contact with a Galoomba at this point would instantly kill the player, even before they land. Totally unfair and likely to cause the player to skip the level out of frustration. Based on this, it would also be infeasible to have all 99 Galoombas spawn in the sky throughout the level, not least because they would only fall to the ground as the player approached from below. This would unintentionally create a bizarre scenario where the player has to dodge Galoombas constantly raining from above, where each falling enemy has the potential to kill them in one shot. The solution was to position most of the Galoombas around the island as if they had already landed ahead of the player and started looting the various locations before the player reached them. Speaking of the locations available, let's start on the left side of the level and explore towards the end goal location. You know, like a typical Mario level. As mentioned before, the section of the island close to the level start was constructed into large cliffs that would prevent the player from accessing the island without first boarding the airplane as intended. A mixture of platforms here are meant to represent the rocky geology and forests found throughout Erangel, and provide some additional verticality for player navigation in the 2D Mario universe. Next, we have one of the major urban centres found on Erangel. Great places to loot, but dangerous to explore with its confined apartment blocks and unseen threats around every corner. I constructed these buildings, complete with wallpapered interiors and balconies, to provide a tricky encounter space to take out the Galoombas already looting these buildings. However, they are also the source of ample looting, so I made sure that there are a number of fire flowers available here for the player. This small outbuilding contains a mushroom for healing, and I placed a superstar in one of the question blocks on the rooftop to give the player a brief power boost to take out enemies, almost as if they found an energy drink or a rare weapon in a red crate. The next area is heavily wooded and can present a challenge with Galoombas ambushing the player from out of sight, in this case from above. Beneath the ground is one of the secret military bunkers, complete with armour and weapons that can be looted before escaping through a secret exit. Crossing a bridge, usually one of the deadliest choke points in Erangel, the player will stand at the foot of a large hill with some small bodies of water, just like the dominant Stalber hill that looms over the landscape in PUBG. This spot offers more verticality and opportunity to get height advantage on the enemy to take them out from above, if they can make the risky climb to the top, that is. Finally, a small hamlet of abandoned farm buildings provides the remaining loot locations before the player is presented with the end goal location that they must reach after taking out all the competition. This level was meant to be a bit of fun to try and recreate some of the Battle Royale experience of PUBG, and given the toolset available in Super Mario Maker, I think that this homage turned out fairly good. I think the airplane section managed to distill the typical chaos, and at times unbearable voice chat from the start of each Battle Royale round, into a reasonable gag that pokes fun at this aspect of the game. I also ended up adding this to the level with a few random sound effect callouts on some of the Galoombas that trigger when the player kills them. As explained before, I did intentionally go with the Galoombas as the default enemy type to manage the chaos of 99 enemies vying for Mario at the same time. For a harder challenge, another option may have been to use hammer bros with their hammer projectiles that would represent the armed nature of the other players. As it happens, the fire flower allows the player to dispatch most enemies quickly, so it may not have made much of a difference. Another consideration is that I could have selected some of the enemies to be parachute variants to obviously represent the players parachuting onto the island instead of just dropping from the sky. This may have helped solve one of the problems with the level, where the enemies spawn in from above and can land on the player, unfairly hurting or even killing them if they are unlucky. I played through the level a few times and found that the timer was usually long enough to just create a close finish regardless of which drop-in pipe the player selected. Starting closer to the end goal usually had the hardest completion rate since the player needed to traverse all the way back and forth through the level to complete it. Providing a bit more time would have eased some of this pressure, but I decided to stick with 200 seconds based on player testing so as to represent the pressure usually created by the closing circle that was otherwise impossible to create in Super Mario Maker. But perhaps you have another suggestion that could have worked to create this aspect of a Battle Royale mode in Mario Maker. Please leave a comment below if you have any ideas. Oh, and in case you are wondering, this level wasn't selected to appear on the Giantbomb Get On My Level feature, but you can still try this level for yourself by using the course ID in the description below. There's also a link to my playthrough video of the level if you'd like to watch that instead. My next video in this series will be looking at another small level but with a very different theme. Literally. Watch out for that soon, but until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.